Welcome to Relax and Chat, presented by RDG Books. I'm your host, Rod Gilley. I was worried about this episode because I had the flu, but our guest was so charming and so entertaining that this episode is really great. So kick back and relax and enjoy episode 11 of Relax and Chat with Shay Galloway.
Hi Shay, how you doing today?
I'm pretty great. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. Kind of fighting a cold, but getting there.
Same here. Same in this house.
So, for those of the audience that don't know you yet, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I go by Shay Galloway as my writing name. I am an English professor at a community college. I've been doing that since 2018-ish. So I'm in my fifth year of teaching. I've sort of lost count. You know, the last 2 years of teaching have been wild. So they've really sort of meshed together, and I don't really know what year it is anymore. I grew up kind of around the West, Rocky Mountain West. Spent the first half of my childhood in California. And then when my mom remarried, we moved to Wyoming. And my family still lives there. We spent all of my teen years there. We had a little stint in Colorado for a few years. And then I went to school at Utah State University and studied English with a creative writing emphasis there. And then I kind of had thought I would pursue editing or publishing, and it's a lot of work trying to break into that market. You have to go be a poor intern in New York City, and I was like too poor to go be a poor intern in New York City. And I went to New York and I was like, oh, this place is not for me. Or like living in LA just also like I've been to LA. I preferred LA to New York, but I still was like, I don't think I'm a big city person. So I was like, I don't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to write, but you know, in college, I sort of was like, this is not gonna probably be my moneymaker for a long time. So I ran away to France and was a nanny for a year, and got engaged. I had been dating my now husband for a few years, but we got engaged, and I came home and we got married. And then I was working at a university, the University of Utah, in the School of Music, just sort of on the administrative end. And I realized like I really like the atmosphere of universities and colleges. And I really kind of missed it. And so I was like, I think I want to be a professor. And so I applied to grad schools or I at least reached out to grad schools, kind of thinking I would take a year to feel it out. And then within the next 9 months, I was in grad school and getting an MFA. And I went to Roosevelt University in Chicago, right in downtown Chicago. So found myself in a big city again, and I liked it while I was there. And then I was very much ready to leave when I graduated. I had missed the mountains, and so we decided to go for Washington. We'd never been here. We just were like, it sounds nice. And so we moved out, and we really love it. And I sort of really quickly got an adjunct position as an adjunct English instructor. And so I have that job that I'm really into. It's still hard as a professor teaching, right? It's still teaching. But I still really love it. And then since I'm still an adjunct, I still have time to write. And in 2001, again, all the years have sort of meshed together. I signed a publishing contract for my MFA thesis. What was my MFA thesis? I signed a publishing contract with a small press, and it is going to be out in March. of 2023, so just in a couple of months here. And the title is The Valley of Sage and Juniper. So I'm really looking forward to it and had a really exciting sort of writing journey.
Okay, well, we'll move on to the basic questions that I always ask. And let's see, the first one's pretty interesting. Do you consider yourself to be a pantser or a plotter?
I am a pantser at heart. I have been writing for a really long time. Like, it sounds super cliche, but I have been writing basically since I knew how to form sentences on paper. And I always just like wrote. So for me, I've always been kind of I write sort of by inspiration of like flashes of lightning. And so I usually just, once I get an idea, I sort of just run with it. And it takes me about 5,000 to 10,000 words to really get a feel for a story. And by then I sort of know if it's something that is sustainable, if I'm still really excited about it after that length of time. Then I might pause and like start to actually plot it out. Or when I get stuck is when I start to plot things out. But yeah, most of the time I just sort of go for it and then just kind of plot as I go. And I kind of envy people that can do those like spider webs and like the note cards. I just don't have, I don't think I have the organization for that. I think I feel like if I was to write all those notes, I would feel like I had written the whole book. So I just wouldn't write the book. I would just have all these note cards everywhere. So yeah, I mostly just go for it and pants and plot as I go if I need to. And my plotting is a bunch of like notes scribbled in the margins of my manuscript.
That's kind of cool, though. It sounds like sort of a hybrid between a pantser and a plotter. That's pretty cool. So I was wondering, how do you balance your responsibilities of day-to-day life with the necessary time it takes to write a book? I mean, it takes quite a bit of time. How do you balance that?
So one, I'll admit that I am not an everyday writer. It takes me a long time to write stuff. So my MFA thesis, the book that I have coming out in March, that took me about a year, and that was quick for me. And I think only because I had that deadline of November 1st of that year to turn it in. And I knew I wanted to have like a whole manuscript to turn in. So that was fast for me. I mean, I didn't have a child back then, and I had a full-time job, but it was sitting in an office at a computer. So I had a lot of time to like write then. Now, yeah, I've never been an everyday writer. And even now I will take at least one day off on the weekends. I don't write when I'm traveling. And then like, if I'm just really not feeling it and everything just feels like a struggle, I'll just take a little break from writing. And then I also teach. So sometimes grading and lesson planning will sort of take precedence over that. And then now also as a mom, my son is almost 3, so I don't get a lot of writing done when he's around. So a lot of my writing now happens at nap time, which is like 2 hours after lunch. And it sort of has forced me to be a lot more intentional about my writing time. Like, he goes to nap time and I just have to be like, you know what, my house is a mess. I can clean the house when he's awake, or try to get him to help me. This is my time to sit down and like not have him try to tap on my computer. So I really just try to get as much done in that 2 hours that I know I'll have. But again, I also try to give myself that grace of like, hey, other things are going to take priority, right? Like my paying job is going to take priority. Like my students need these grades to move forward. So I will do that. And then just, that's just giving myself some grace about not being super consistent, or allowing myself the time to step back. I don't ever want to like resent or not enjoy. If I ever feel like I don't enjoy writing, then I'm like, I think I need a break from this. Yeah, and then yeah, it's helped me feel a little less guilty of not writing every day. You always see those quotes from these famous authors that are like, I write every day, or I write 8 hours a day. And it's like, well, I can't afford to do that because I have an actual job. So, yeah, like just for me, it's just been a lot of shifting, learning how to shift time as well, and knowing like, hey, my son's going to stop taking naps here soon. Like, I already feel it's coming. So that means I'm probably either going to have to write early in the morning or late at night. And that, I'm probably going to fall asleep at night. So I'm probably going to have to wake up really early. And just sort of understanding like I write slow and that's okay. There's not a time frame for finishing a project unless you have a contract or a deadline. Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I think it sounds like your typical writer in a way that, you struggle to find the time to sit down and write.
I envy the days of when I was a teenager. I would just like write for hours and like I was like, oh, why can't I do that anymore? It's like, oh yeah, I like didn't have to pay any bills. And like I could sit for 5 hours and just write and go for it and all that stuff.
You've been writing a long time, so just for the fun of it, I thought I'd ask, what would you say was the most fun story you ever wrote? So whether it was published or not, just gave you a lot of fun with that story.
So probably one of the most fun stories I wrote, it's a short story that was published by Scribble Lit Mag in like 2020. And the title is called The Day the Barrowmans Killed Each Other. And it was probably the short. I tend to write about small, weird towns, and that story I just like completely let loose on hyperbolizing just small town life. So the premise of it is there's this couple that's just like super volatile and like everything about their relationship is wrong, and they decide like, okay, like we're gonna get old and boring, or like we have to kill each other. Like this is the only way out of this like terrible relationship. And then they like put a notice in the paper and the whole town like shows up, and it's like this big like event in this small town. And I won't give away the end for anyone that wants to read it. But I'm like, it was just like this weird little story that came out of nowhere for me. And I felt like I was really proud of myself that I like had characterized almost an entire town. There's a whole cast of characters in that just I felt like you knew them in the like paragraph that you learned about them. And it's a 3,000 word story, and I had characterized this whole town, and it was just like a weird out there kind of story. That I just kind of love it. And it's like gritty and like, yeah, just wacky.
Well, it sounds pretty cool. And 3,000 words is not a lot. I mean, developing 2 characters is a good job. Developing a whole town, wow.
Yeah, and like, yeah, I mean, I grew up in a small town, so I think I got that experience, but just drawing on that.
Well, the next question I would ask is, this should be interesting. What would you say is the hardest scene that you ever had to write, that it was just really hard to get that scene done?
So content-wise, in my work in progress that I'm currently drafting, I wrote a lynching scene, and it was pretty brutal. It's probably like the most brutal, heartbreaking scene I've ever written. So it was pretty rough. I actually had to take a couple days break from the work. So that one just emotionally was quite harsh. And then logistically, like almost on the opposite end of the spectrum, for the book that I have coming out for my debut, there's like a budding romance in it. And that was surprisingly hard to write this budding romance. Like, I don't consider myself to be a very romantic person. And I was trying to I don't want it to be like too saccharine but I want it to be believable that these two people are really into each other. But one's, she's a teenager, so it's supposed to be awkward, but I don't want it to make people cringe and embarrassment. So that was also really difficult, just trying to figure out how to make that all work the way that I wanted it to. I think it worked out okay. Probably still not the most romantic scene. But I feel okay with it.
Yeah. I mean, you got to put yourself there as a writer to a certain extent, and whatever emotion is necessary for the type of story you're writing. But you also have to be true to yourself. And what you said is very valid. If you tried to go all Harlequin romance, it probably would have been comical. It's always the right thing to stay true to yourself. And I bet that scene turned out just fine. Okay, how about this? We'll flip it over and ask you, what was the most fun scene you ever wrote?
I have so many. So also in my debut, I have, so it's a Western, and there's a scene that's set up as a shootout scene, but there's a baby involved. The whole reason the shootout doesn't happen is because the baby is there. And it was just really fun because when I started writing it, this was the scene that came to me fully formed. And I was everything is working up to this scene. And I just always had this vision of a woman holding a baby in one arm and holding a gun in the other.
Yeah.
And just the line, she was wielding a baby and the gun as naturally, as although it was the most natural thing in the world. Wow. And so that was just really fun to actually put that into words and have that come alive on paper. And it was one of the first scenes I had in mind, and it was one of the last scenes that I actually wrote down. So it was just really, I mean, it made now I'm talking about it, the context of it doesn't sound fun, but it was it was just a fun sort of enlightening moment of seeing that come to fruition. And it is sort of I hope to see it on screen one day and just be this was such a powerful image for me of just this woman who's just a badass. I don't know if I can swear on your show, but yeah, this woman who's just so empowered, who is both feminine and motherly and nurturing, but also not afraid to do what has to be done in the grandest sense to protect her family.
Well, I was going to ask you to tell us about your upcoming novel, The Valley of Sage and Juniper.
Get a copy of Shay's fantastic debut novel, The Valley of Sage and Juniper, at the Amazon link down in the description. And if you really want something special, click on the link Browsers Olympia to get a signed, autographed copy of the book that you can have for yourself or give as a gift. Something special.
No spoilers, but let's hear a little more. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, so it's a Depression era Western. It's set in a nebulous Western Rocky Mountain town. And it's about two sisters who are growing up on a ranch. And a mysterious preacher shows up in town and starts causing them a lot of trouble. And it spans about 15 years. So it's 15 years of them sort of dealing with this preacher and all of his nefarious ways. And while they're growing up and going through womanhood and, going through the perils of love and what it means to be a woman and especially in this era of, what are women able to do? And so that's sort of the main basis of it, is this exploration of like gritty women who pioneered the West.
That's cool. I mean, because as far as Westerns goes, I'm probably like most people. I've seen the Clint Eastwood and the John Wayne, and women are kind of, honestly, in those movies treated sort of as background,
Mm-hmm.
and it sounds really awesome that in your novel, it's focused on these two sisters. They're the main characters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it shows kind of how they deal with the things that come along, right?
Yeah, and it's very much inspired by I grew up watching all those Westerns too, and like hearing people from outside of the West sort of what they perceive about the West. And I grew up hearing all these stories of like women who like came across the plains, or like they were living in cabins while their husbands were out hunting, or like working on the railroad. So they were at home for months without a man, and like they were shooting at cougars and bears and like having babies in a cabin by themselves. And so I always kind of grew up hearing about so much of like how women really were the foundation of the West surviving. And so like that kind of was really inspired by the stories that my grandparents told of their mothers and grandmothers, and of the pioneers moving across through the mountains. So yeah, that was sort of, I always was like, I want to talk about the women in the West too.
Yeah. At this point, I kind of turn the reins over. I sit back, and this gives you an opportunity to speak directly to the audience, and you can share anything you like. You can promote your website, your book, an upcoming event, anything you want to say. This is your opportunity to say hi to the audience.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, audience. Be on the lookout for The Valley of Sage and Juniper. It is being released March 21st, and you can pre-order it from wherever books are sold. It's on Amazon too, so if you're international, you can order it through Amazon's international websites. You can also visit my website, shaygalloway.com. Can sign up to receive updates, news and updates. I don't spam you. I actually very rarely write any updates. But it'll give you updates for, when the book is released, any appearances that I'm making. I am also in the works of setting up with a local bookstore to do signed copies of the book that you can order through them, and they will ship it to you. So that's where you can kind of learn more about the Valley of Sage and Juniper. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. My handle is the Gallow Cat. And Facebook as well. I mostly am around on Twitter and Instagram. I post a lot about writing life and mom life, and sometimes about what it's like being a teacher, and just the silly things that I hear from students, as though I wasn't a student less than a decade ago. But yeah, follow me on all the socials or check out my website.
Awesome. Now, your book, The Valley of Sage and Juniper, it's coming out on Running Wild Press in March, right?
Yes.
Awesome. And then you referred to a work in progress, so you've got another book going.
Yeah, so I'm currently querying a Gilded Age historical fiction, about some mixed race twins, who are the descendants of an ex-slave and a conscripted Confederate soldier, so someone who did not volunteer to be in the military. And one of the twins can pass as white and becomes a U.S. Marshal. The other one cannot pass as white, and she becomes a vaudeville actress.
Oh my.
And there's some intrigue and murder, and it's a fun, gritty again story, but a lot of nice costumery, and it's the Gilded Age, so it also has a lot about all the pretty gilded things of the time.
Yeah. Well, when you're ready to release that book, I hope you'll come back on the show and we'll.
Oh yeah, of course.
Put a link in the description that'll connect to your website and, of course, to your novel, so everyone can go get a copy of that. I'm looking forward to reading it myself. I think it'll be cool, and again, I really hope you'll do the show again. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, until next time, you take care.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the future episodes to come. RDG Books is going to make every effort to release a new video on the 1st, the 10th, and the 20th of each month. We look forward to seeing you and hope you enjoy all of the shows that we produce. Have a wonderful day.